Welcome to Dill, a beautiful and quaint town down on the Kent coast. And it all started here. Back in 1996, aged just 19, I began working at what was then the East Kent Mercury office. But times have changed. This is now an Emporium gift shop. I'd already been writing for the newspaper since I was at school, but when I became staff, I sat here, back in the days of dodgy opuses and even dodgier knitted sweaters. Back then it was before the internet, and I had to hone my skills very quickly on how to generate my own content. And it was in places like this, the King's Head pub, where I used to engage with the local community. I was fortunate enough to have a wonderful boss, local broadcasting legend Malcolm Mitchell, and he used to teach me the value of putting people at the centre of the story. The first club that I covered was this one, Dover Athletic. They were in the GM Vauxhall Conference. They were managed by Peter Taylor, who went on to become the England under-21 boss, and for a brief spell took charge of the England national team, where he made David Beckham captain. And it was through Peter that I had the opportunity to meet the then England manager Glenn Huddle at the local Warmer in Kingsdown Golf Club. We had an exclusive interview where we discussed his plans for the Three Lions. And while covering this club, I also worked for BBC Radio Kent as a sports commentator. And it was during those early years that I got invited to co-commentate on an FA Vase final at the old Wembley Stadium. And one of my very proudest moments was at the age of 20 when I was named Kent Young Journalist of the Year. It was the first and only time that a sports writer had ever won that category. I beat everybody from ITV and BBC, all the broadcast journalists, up to the age of 26. It was my only second season in journalism. After cutting my teeth on the Kent coast and winning the BT South of England Sports Writer of the Year award, I moved to Brighton and worked for the Evening Argus, and then came up to the capital to work for the Nationals. I got into football in the mid-1980s and I became a West Ham fan. That was back in the days of Tony Cottee and Frank McAvenny. I'm sitting at the statue of our three most famous sons, Bobby Moore, Jeff Hurst, Martin Peters, the three England World Cup winners that graced Upton Park back in the day. I was fortunate enough to go on and interview many of the players coming through the ranks in more recent years, including Declan Rice, who's gone on to play for Arsenal and England. As a journalist, I have a good working relationship with the Hammers. I used to go around the house of the late co-owner David Gold for chats about football and interviews. And 18 months ago, after I'd written an EFL column about the unfair redistribution of finances from the Premier League to the lower divisions, the owner, David Sullivan, called me for 45 minutes where we had a frank exchange of views, and that led to a fantastic double pay spread. One of the most prominent clubs that I've covered is Arsenal, and here I am at the Emirates Stadium. I've been all over Europe with the Gunners, in the Champions League, the Europa League, and of course across the UK in the Premier League and the various domestic competitions. Thierry Henry, what a legend. Arsenal god. I've had the good fortune to meet him a few times, and on one occasion it was when Lincoln City, then in the National League, got to the quarter-finals of the FA Cup and took on Arsenal here at the Emirates Stadium. Thierry was a Sun Sport columnist at the time, and I took two of the Lincoln players down to North London to meet the Gunners legend, where he gave them a guided tour of the stadium. It was such a pleasure to cover the club when the legendary Arsene Wenger was at the helm. It was towards the end of his era, but he was still always good value. I remember on one of my interviews I mentioned Jose Mourinho had said something about him, and he said, "Justin, can I stop you there? Can we leave the words Jose and Mourinho out of this conversation, and then the next 15 minutes will go very smoothly." What a man. Another Gunners legend that I worked with was Ian Wright. Spent a year with him covering Wrighty's Road to Wembley, an FA Cup feature that began in the early qualifying rounds and went right through to the final, which Arsenal actually ended up winning. In the early rounds, Met Police were featured, and there was a player called Billy Crook. So I had this great idea that we would dress Wrighty in a Metropolitan Police uniform, take him out to New Scotland Yard. We took Billy Crook with us, put him in a prison uniform. We had a swag bag. I arranged for the FA Cup to be brought down, and we took a fantastic picture, which was a double-page spread of Wrighty arresting the Metropolitan Police player. That was the 2014-15 season. We had so much fun. I took Wrighty down to Dover because I wanted the headline, the Wright Cliffs of Dover. And we took Ian out on a boat with the FA Cup. He was threatening to throw it overboard. I thought, yeah, throw it over, Wrighty. That'll give us a great story. But yeah, Arsenal got to the final. They played Aston Villa at Wembley. And ahead of that, we went to meet Jack Wilshere and we did a big feature on him ahead of the match. I seem to have interviewed a lot of Arsenal players who've got statues. Tony Adams is another one. Did a great one with him actually, where he said if Jack Wilshere is not careful, his career is going to be over in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, he was right. And there was one great season where I had exclusive access to then Chelsea star Samuel Eto'o. The Cameroon legend had just moved over to England, and I managed to get him into the Sun office and we did a 1-hour video interview. And for a whole year, we pretty much had him on speed dial. I enjoyed my time working with Chelsea, going on a few of their pre-season tours and covering their Premier League title triumph in 2017. Trust is a huge thing in journalism, and I built up so many great relationships in football. On one occasion, I got a call out of the blue from Southampton Football Club. They were really happy with the way I dealt with a Jason Puncheon piece. They called to say, could I go out to Barcelona and interview their new manager, Mauricio Pochettino? So I did the first interview with the Argentine, who obviously went on to manage Tottenham, Chelsea and the USA national team. I was the first national newspaper journalist to interview Harry Kane. It was back in 2014 and his agent invited me to his house. And I had this idea, Michael Caine, Harry Kane. So I wanted a headline, my name's Harry Kane, not a lot of people know that. And then underneath was going to be the article to introduce him. So I asked Harry if he would dress up like Michael Caine, put on the glasses, put on the suit. He agreed, and we did a fantastic photo shoot. Another prominent footballer at the time that I had access to was Andros Townsend. Andros was playing for Tottenham. I did various interviews with him and we went go-kart driving on one occasion. That was absolute fun. But the most memorable moment with Andros was when I was with him in his house, in his lounge in North London, when he got a phone call out of the blue from a certain Roy Hodgson, who was naming him in the England squad for the very first time. I ended up doing an exclusive interview with him, got a photo of him next to the TV where the Sky announcement was made about half an hour later. It was a lovely moment. When I first started out as a journalist, I used to go to matches with nothing more than a notepad and pen. Nowadays, I go with all manner of equipment. Go with a laptop, microphones, headphones, tripods, lights, even extra cameras. But I started producing my own videos almost 20 years ago, and for The Sun around 2011. I've built up quite an impressive portfolio, including interviewing international Premier League and EFL players and managers, legends of the game like Gaza, Brian Robson, Paolo Di Canio, opinion pieces and behind the scenes features. I captured Jamie Vardy's Wild Championship title celebration, which got almost 5 million views on the Sun's Football Facebook page. In more recent times, I've been asked to take care of our EFL coverage. My work has been universally praised, internally and externally. And having to cover 72 clubs, I'm definitely a 360-degree journalist. One highly prominent manager I struck up a good relationship with was Thomas Frank, and he joined me for a few pints and a chat at Brentford's fans' favourite pub, The Griffin, fulfilling a promise he made to me ahead of the club winning promotion to the Premier League.
That's yours, Justin.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Todd.
It blows my mind how many people I've met, interviewed and worked with during my career. I've been around the world, whether it's been covering the Euros in France, the Champions League final at the San Siro, the World Cup in Brazil, or travelling to China to write a feature. And here is one legendary manager who I've a long working relationship with.
Hey everybody, Neil Warnock here. I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to talk about Justin now. He's been a journalist, as a manager, football manager, there's some you can talk to and some you've got to avoid. And he's one I've always trusted. If I've said things to him, he's never let me down. It's been a pleasure actually dealing with him over these years.
I've been in journalism for 3 decades and the media landscape has changed drastically. but have always been at the forefront of this evolution. Good journalism is and always will be good journalism, whatever format it takes. I love what I do and can't wait to get cracking on the next story.